Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate the best contributors to our independent policy movement for progress to bring power to people like you. With us today on the program, we got to talk to Cody Hill. Cody was with us in the past before we transformed our channel here into a network. He is a former employee of Facebook. And so we got to talk, some general catch up and feelings about the 2020 election. But then we got to do a deep dive on some of the implications of the reach and operations of Facebook and what are some of the potential technical approaches for what we need to be doing in our government to be able to address it. So if you enjoy conversations about technology and how social media is run and whether or not we need to censor anything or not, you're going to love today's conversation. So with that being said, everyone, we want you all to buckle in, and I want you all to let us know, do you think at the end of the day that Facebooks and Twitters of the world should be censoring any users on their website? Let us know that in the comments down below. But without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, we are here with Cody Hill. You may have known him from some of our past episodes before the Hill of Roses turned into a network. We had Cody on for an interview on his top priorities, but there's been a lot that's happened since then, and there's been some changes in his own career that has allowed him to be able to talk about certain subjects that we alluded to, but we were even back then when we were talking, we had to be a little bit more obscure with the references. You work for Facebook and now you have transitioned out of there. So, I think the first question that I'd like to ask you, Cody, is how have you felt this summer? We've gone through a lot. This is going to be like one of our first few episodes, after the election has taken place. How are you just feeling about the general state of the country right now, post-election? General thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think generally after the election, it's kind of a weird lull time right now where I think that both sides are trying to gain their footing on what they think they're going to do moving forward. I think most people in the Yang gang, including myself, are positive that Biden got elected. I know that there are people who have criticisms of that. I certainly do myself, but I think overall, in terms of having an ability to build and create new positive things, I think that's probably the better option. So I'm relieved that we're in that situation. In terms of, with all the, I don't know, it seems like people aren't quite sure what's going to be happening next. I think everyone is wanting to have this very cooled down time of recovery and rebuilding, but there are these looming threats how long is Trump's attempt to try and prove that he won? How long is that? How much power is that going to have? Is that going to reveal anything that becomes a controversy? After his election, there were things questioning the election that went on for several years. I can't see that happening now, but yeah, I'm feeling fine with things. I just kind of want to get to a new year. And then, of course, COVID is the overlying sheet that covers everything that is tough to be optimistic about. But, we have the virus coming out soon that seems to be relatively effective. And in terms of social media and Facebook, where I used to work at, there doesn't seem to be any crazy controversies right now that have come out like there were last time with the Cambridge Analytica. But we can get into this, but I think social media in general is just something that is a constant influence that kind of shapes the way that people think about the world. So I am mildly optimistic, but yeah, we'll see how things go.
Yeah, I can echo some of those sentiments. It does feel like we are in the process of turning over a new leaf, but we have some cynicism about do we really trust them to even want to deliver the change that we know needs to try and happen? And then B, there's still the process of having a very divided government in the fact that we did not win as much as a lot of people were hoping for, or even some predicting. I'm a little less surprised by this. This is basically kind of what I expected from the map this year, but like that's left us in a situation where it's like, okay, how much is fundamentally going to be able to change?
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to get this done? And you're right, we're dragging our feet through just accepting the results of this election, and we still have to accept the reality that we're still in COVID, and we
Mhm.
still have not actually done anything to address the root causes of so many of the
Yep.
protests that have been going on around the country. So I think you're right. We are kind of in the let's keep working to finish this out and see if we can transform. And Georgia has been my big focus. But I want to
Yeah.
turn my attention to what you were talking about. Social media's kind of impact in the selection cycle. The first thing I wanted to talk about in that regard is, can you allude to the people out there what types of responsibilities you were involved in so that we can understand a little bit
Yeah.
more of the background of what you understand of how social media works today?
Yeah, so I worked at Facebook in the headquarters in Menlo Park, the belly of the beast, as you might say. And I walked by Zuck a few times, Sheryl Sandberg, and everything. So I'd gotten my MBA and then went and worked at Facebook for that for about 2.5 years. And my responsibility was in product operations. So what that means is basically helping products. So Facebook has an incredible amount of products that you would never think are products. So if you think of something like the login page, like Facebook's login page has hundreds of people working on it that are all incredibly smart, incredibly well paid, just so that you don't even know that there's a login page. So like if they can make it as frictionless as possible for you to be able to sign on to Facebook without having to enter your password or have to do an extra click, that is worth an incredible amount of money to Facebook, just being able to log in. So like things like that, Facebook just has an incredible amount of products. So I worked on a product, and hopefully no one at Facebook listens to this and I don't spout off anything too bad that can make me get in trouble. But I worked on Facebook's biggest growth product, which is in emerging markets. So if you think about the world, Facebook's TAM, or total addressable market, is the 8 billion people that live in the world.
Yeah.
And currently about 2.9 billion people use Facebook at least once a month. So that's called MAP, or monthly active people. So one time a month, almost 3/4 of the world logs onto Facebook. Is that the math right there? Maybe 2 out of 3. Okay, almost 3/4. But so if you think about how Facebook can grow, they care about two things. They care about users on the platform, and they care about ads to those users. It's a very simple equation. Like 99.8% of their revenue is ad revenue. And ad revenue equals the amount of people using it versus the amount of ads that you show them, and how much can you charge for those ads and everything. So there's a lot of people in the growth organization that I worked in just trying to get new people onto the platform once per month. So if you log onto Facebook or interact with it once in a month, you are a active user. So that is MAP, again, monthly active people. So my product specifically was to get people connected in emerging markets. So of the 8 billion people in the world, only 4 billion of them use the internet. There's still 4 billion people in the world that do not use the internet, which is crazy to think about in our bubbles. But the number one way for Facebook to get new users is literally just to connect people to the internet for the first time in places like Asia, Africa, Latin America, where they have poor connectivity, where they have typically less educated, less digitally literate, and people with less resources. So Facebook works with a lot of like telecom companies, like the AT&Ts and telcos of the world in every country, and makes it easier for people to basically get online for the first time. And so I was working on one of those teams that helped get new users onto the internet and then thus onto Facebook for the first time. Because one of the first things that you'll do when you get onto the internet for the first time, especially as like a new user, is you'll create a Facebook account. So it's one of the most predictable things that they have. So
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Frankly, it is kind of a hub. Back in the day, in the very earliest days of the internet, this was kind of how we functioned to build a social community. So it makes sense that Facebook is trying to expand their reach by just trying to connect people to the internet. I think the last question I want to ask in this first part of our conversation on this subject is, AOC had recently made this point as a result of this election cycle that she thinks that digital advertising from a lot of the current incumbents in Washington are being mismanaged and are probably needing to go towards Facebook ads in that last week. Could you talk to us about, what is that efficiency of what really a Facebook ad
Yeah.
does and why they are such a player in the advertising
Yeah.
space?
Well, Facebook has created the most effective ads in the history of the world. They by far are the best marketing platform. And so if you think about what is an ad is basically like, how can we predict, like, how can we get you to do what we want you to do? And that can manifest in a lot of different ways every industry has that. So what that means is like, how can we best predict how you think and who you are so that we can serve you the perfect ad? Because we have our social scientists that know how to inject the correct ad into the person who thinks in a very specific way into their brain, basically. So if you think about like TV, the different dimensions that they can study humans on for TVs is like, okay, they know that you live in four people are in your house, parents and two kids. They know that this is your income range. You're in this neighborhood. You have this cable service, and you generally watch these channels. So you watch sports, or you watch, the Home Shopping Network or whatever. So they can generally serve you ads on those dimensions. So then you think about something like Facebook and all the things that they have to study about you and basically learn how you think so that they can put the best possible ad in front of you. So they know who all your friends are and what all your friends like, because a great predictor of how you think and who you are is who are your friends and what do they do. They know the college that you went to. They know every comment that you've liked, so they can, or anything that you've stopped scrolling on and looked at more closely, or anything that you've clicked on. They know things you've reacted to negatively. They know things you've reacted to positively. So they can build this psychological profile of someone, saying this person is most likely a Bernie Sanders voter who probably thinks is a bit more left on like social issues, and is maybe like more blue collar. So we're going to serve them, whether it's like an actual ad or a piece of content that they want you to click on, because those are like pretty similar. Like, not everything is just a straight up ad, download this or buy this, but it's content that you're served that the content creators are paying to have people click on. So basically, the better that they can predict what you're going to do and who you are, the more they can charge for their ads, because those are more effective. So the people buying ads then will pay more. So that's kind of part of that whole equation of like number of people on Facebook versus effectiveness of ads.
Cody, so I think one follow-up question on that before we go to our second part, how do they do that targeting? Is it, let's say, you said as an example, you can say, I have an understanding that this might be a Bernie Sanders supporter. Is the targeting being done by the politician saying, I want to target a Bernie Sanders supporter? Or is there, Facebook choosing to say, I want to send this type of messaging there? Can you tell me who directs that targeting?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a combination of like Facebook's account managers and the people that know how to give the most effective ads, and then the people that are buying them. So like the people, they want to target a certain segment, and Facebook can give us all these different dimensions that can hyper target different segments. So if you want to target a Bernie Sanders supporter who lives in rural Texas, then like they can get you in front of them. If you want to target a African-American or a Latino, or someone who's maybe friends with a lot of other Bernie Sanders supporters who also shares things a lot, so they think that that person would then share that ad or that piece of content more often, then they can do that. So like they have hundreds of different dimensions that they can measure you on, and basically sell higher priced ads to say that like, okay, well, we can give you a segment of people that share things more often, and thus your ad will go much further. So like they know every action that you've taken online, that you've taken on Facebook, and they've built out all these basically micro products for ads that can give the person who's paying for it a higher chance that the person who's seeing the ad reacts in the way that they want them to react. So it's just like Facebook just basically has the best psychological profile of everyone in the world, because they have so many dimensions on which to measure it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So we'll be right back where we're going to talk about how do we actually start to address these things. So we understand some of the implications of the power that Facebook has through its platform. We're going to discuss how do we actually start making sure that this is in the best interest of the people. So we'll be right back with Cody Hill. Okay, we are back with Cody Hill. We were just talking about, a lot of the implications of Facebook's reach and what it can really be able to do to influence our politics. In this second part, we're going to be talking about some of the proposed solutions that are around this. I think the first one I want to talk about with you, Cody, is, in addition to so many of the presidential implications and Senate implications of this election cycle, there was a lot of state ballot initiatives. And one that had passed, which was championed by Andrew Yang as well, is Prop 24, data privacy bill. And I wanted to ask you, could you let the folks out there kind of understand what the implications of something like that would be for a Facebook and how you would be managing your products?
Yeah, so Prop 24 is basically the first step in allowing people to have more control of their own data, which I think is a very necessary long-term goal in order to combat companies basically being able to do whatever they want with it. And so, so Prop 24 basically, I don't know all the machinations and all the explicit clauses in it, but it basically makes it so that you can be able to opt out of sharing your data with much easier with big companies. So our companies are taking our data, they're selling it, they're reselling it, they're selling the metadata, and it is an incredibly lucrative market. I mean, anyone who's followed Yang knows about how data is the oil of the 21st century, and it is very true. And we should find some way to try and profit off of it as people, because they're using all these free services, and they are essentially shaping the way that we think. And most people don't even know about that. So I think the general thought on the prop is that it's not perfect. There's externalities that are unforeseen that might not be great. So for example, if you think of a startup website that is trying to make money off of ads, that is smaller, that's trying to compete, they're not going to be able to get to that level as quickly. Whereas Facebook, who is going to be a lot better positioned to combat this and find workarounds. So it could have some anti-competitive effects where this actually benefits in a weird way the people who are actually on top. But overall, so I think they have some editing that they need to do it. But overall, it's the first step in saying hey, people should, as opposed to just clicking the I consent button whenever you create a new account or log into something and no one reads it. This is saying that you now have an option to be able to choose which sites are able to profit off of your money, off of your data, excuse me. So I think any step in that general direction, even if it's not directly forward, even if it's 80 degrees, I'm all for it.
So can you help people understand out there? I want to just provide you a little bit of the devil's advocate. You mentioned how it's if a product is free, really we are the product in a way. And, that makes me think, why should we be necessarily having this data ownership be in our hands if we're consenting to receive a free product in exchange for that consent? How does it work where, let's say, someone who chooses to only let a couple websites, have access to my data versus someone who gives it all, I become less valuable of a user to that website. Does that make sense for a company like Facebook to be able to have that? How does that work?
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where you just have to go down the path of what we think is best, and then eventually we'll figure it out. It's if it just stays on the path that it's at and no one is trying to address anything in that direction, then it's just going to get worse and worse. Like Facebook can only go in one direction. That is, and that direction is making ads and understanding how you think and basically molding how you think better. So like Facebook makes more money if they can better pinpoint how you think. And Facebook also can pretty much determine how you think. So it's actually, if you think of a like X and Y axis and you think of a lot of little bubbles over it of like, these are the like far right people, these are the Bernie lefties, these are the traditional conservatives, these are the moderate liberals or whatever. It's basically in Facebook's incentive to move all the people between the bubbles into the bubbles so that the hit rate on all their ads is more effective. So in layman's terms, they are incentivized to polarize people and put people in bubbles. So it's actually more profitable and more effective to put people in a box so that they know exactly how they think, so that they know exactly how they're going to react to every piece of content, so that they can then basically control and like know how long you're going to stay on the platform and get you to always engage in certain things in whatever way that they want you to. I know that in the Social Dilemma, it gave that example of people like in the control room saying like, hey, we're going to show them a picture of their ex-girlfriend because he's like not online, he hasn't been in a while, or we're going to do this, and kind of pulling these strings. And like, in a sense, that does happen because all these algorithms are built that say like, okay, whenever a person has not engaged, logged on for like 3 days, and we know that they're maybe like recently single or something, then we can show some type of content that maybe talks about, the person they just broke up with. Like, it sounds kind of cynical, but it's all just run by these experiments that they're constantly running, hundreds of thousands of them, on every situation for every person. So it's in a weird way, it's kind of pushing people into micro bubbles so that they know exactly how they're going to react to every situation. And that's more profitable.
We make them more predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just going to keep getting more refined and better and better. And we have no way to combat that as humans. Like, our brains can't react to that. So like, it's either going to keep going that way, and it's going to have a lot of negative externalities and that's going to make their ads, more effective. They're going to have a better bottom line because of it. So if that's just the only thing that we keep measuring is like that bottom line, it's going to keep, mental health rates are going to keep going down, depression, suicidality, all these things that we know social media, a increased amount of social media leads to, that's going to keep going up. So we have to start taking steps, even if they're steps kind of in the dark, to find out what the heck to do.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly evident with our current mental health crisis. Currently, 10% of people are currently contemplating suicide, 30% acknowledge, severe depression. And I do have to wonder if social media is that root cause in that. But I think there's one interesting implication in this kind of dynamic over data rights too, is as well as the point in how you say there's manipulation of engagement. And I find that this is the classic debate over censorship. The argument is, if I, the user, truly own my post, then I shouldn't be being censored by it. But the argument for why they have to step in is that they are the publisher who owns and disseminates that content. So I'd love to ask you, in your opinion, how do you think censorship in terms of social media should be approached? And what was Facebook's protocol on that?
Yeah. Oh, it's a tough thing. I'm a big like free speech person. I think that like getting ideas out there and having them heard by the world is much better than keeping them repressed, because it is very evident that if you repress ideas that are not good ideas, that they will only grow and they will only become more powerful, and they'll create very negative subcultures that continue to go around them. And those people believe that they are doing the Lord's work because they're fighting against a culture that is censoring them. So they're even more ravenous about it. So you see this a lot on like the alt-right. You see this a lot on the far left people as well. So it's like the extremes of both sides of the aisle are growing because of censorship. And that is not a good thing. At the same time, like, there are things that shouldn't be like that widely available out there. We got hit with the ability to see everything at any point very quickly, and our brains are not able to adapt to that. So
stuff is fabricated too. We're gonna have to,
and the truth,
technology too. Like I have to wonder, like, what are those reasonable limitations? For example, we were talking about the election earlier. Trump has been claiming victory for himself with
Yeah.
substantiation, as well as, accusations of severe fraud throughout the election
Yeah.
process. And so, what is the responsibility of a social media platform? Twitter obviously put flags on those. There has to be some line, right? We do have reasonable restrictions on
Yeah.
speech.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to know. Censoring the person who's the current president that people voted for, like, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, even if I don't agree with him on a lot of things. But it's something that we have to like keep testing and learning and like find out where the limits of where people say they're not gonna put up with it anymore to where there's like too much censorship. I mean, yeah, I in a way, I think it should be regulated to where they're more public utilities, to where they can't like profit off of these micro communities that are growing and are like very profitable for them, because there are people that are on them and just literally they just become acolytes of these fringes, and they spend all their time doing it, and they're very profitable little niches. And so that it's for Facebook to kind of like shut that down. A lot of them, like, it's not profitable for them to do it. So I think that we need to like regulate things in a very smart way. And a lot of the regulations and things that you hear most laws that we see are just such a like blunt object. And it's not really like a scalpel of like, okay, let's really dive deep into what are some smart things that we can do. Let's like study the repercussions, the backlash that would happen, and come up with a really nuanced plan that might not be perfect, but we could like learn from and adjust to quickly. And I think that's what a lot of like Yang's policies got to. That's what I liked about him, how he was like test and learn. And that's the best way to find the best solution. But in general, like, I am not for censorship. But this environment that's been created is just going to get worse unless we do something.
Yeah, I think, I'd love to touch on that as the final topic. You mentioned, something as a blunt object, and we need to take a more scalpel approach to technology, is the subject of antitrust. Facebook is a significant portion of the advertisement market. And I think we can all acknowledge that they do not have much in the way of competition right now, especially with the fact that they had recently acquired Instagram as well. In your opinion, do you think there are grounds to trust bust Facebook in any way? And if you say yes, what would that divide potentially look like?
Yeah. I think that there are grounds to do it. It is so complicated to know what exactly that would look like. On the one hand, if you did break them up and you made Instagram its own company and you made WhatsApp its own company, Messenger its own company, Facebook app its own company, like, they would be able to maybe even like shut out more of the market, and like it might make the conglomeration of all of them together even more valuable in a weird way. And I don't know, we need to introduce more competition to the market somehow. And it's a hard thing to do because like they really don't have that much competition. They'll talk about like Snapchat, or they'll talk about other like messaging apps. And like in reality, Facebook has, 70% of the people that are online in the world using their services. And they can pull data they know everything that you've done across Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp, and Facebook. And that just makes a more hyper targeted and a better profile of how they can serve ads to you. So, and it's only going to like increase. So I think that there is an argument to do some type of regulation, but maybe it's something that has to do with like the business model, like the ads business model, like the Data Dividend Project. Plug to my friend Enoch Lang. And at the Data Dividend Project, you all should follow them on Twitter and sign up for that. I think that they're doing really good stuff there. It's like if we try and come up with the perfect solution, say this is how we regulate them, then it's never going to be correct, but it's the first step because no one's even like delved into this before. Like no one's going to know what's going to happen once we take the first step, but we have to start taking the first step. Yeah. And so for me, it's like we need to start testing and learning and seeing what the repercussions will be. Like I can guarantee you Facebook has droves of lawyers and I already have 10 contingency plans of every possible type of regulation that could occur. And so it's like anytime something happens, they will know the best way to react right away. So it's almost like it will be hard for them to lose no matter what. Just having seen how professional and smart and how much and like how good they are at what they do. So, but we need to start pushing in that way. We need to start talking about things like this, where we talk about like how it is warping the way that people think and the way that people interact. And it's actually putting people into bubbles because it's more profitable for the companies to do it. And it's what they have to do because they're a for-profit company. So they are beholden to the bottom line. So they actually have to do it. They can't not do it, which is an indictment of the whole kind of capitalistic system in general, which Yang talks about. If you want to get into like the American scorecard, could be a bit of a tangent, but we need to start measuring things outside of only GDP and bottom line, as we all know, if you followed Yang. So,
yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with you. We got to understand the metrics of what we're trying to drive to and fix. And then you're right, we got to start, but be constantly adaptable because that's the industry we're trying to regulate. It's constantly adapting. And so if you try and take a big blunt stick and take a long-ended approach of how you try to solve it, you're going to get flat on your ass because it's going to adapt into a way that's going to go around your regulation. So Cody, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on today to be able to peel back the window on some of the influence that Facebook has, as well as, how we could in general regulate social media. I wanted to give you the floor now. If there's anything that you wanted to plug for the folks out there to go check out.
Sure. Yeah. So I quit my job at Facebook after 2.5 years. I had a nice cushy job there and I moved to North Carolina, where I'm from. And I joined a startup called Upstate North Carolina. You can go to start.keepupstate.com. And it is basically a way to track legislation. And we're bringing transparency to legislation. So it is a very advanced legislation tracker for the state government, for the General Assembly in North Carolina. So you can see every bill that comes up, what the bills mean, and then also do advocacy action to put pressure on legislators to vote for or against bills that you care about or the causes that you care about. So we're helping out nonprofits and state associations that are trying to bring more clarity to laws that are being passed, because there is very little transparency. Most people don't know what's going on in the state legislature, but bills that are passed often have huge effect on people. So we are bringing better technology to bring transparency to state legislatures. So feel free to check that out. Upstate North Carolina, Upstate NC on Twitter. So yeah.
Okay. Well, Cody, thank you so much for letting us know about that. Can you let us know how far along is it for when people can check it out? How far into development is it gone?
It's up and running. We're working with a few nonprofits in North Carolina already. And we have a full platform. We have a bill analysis comparison to where you can see it in different versions of bills that get kind of shoved through. You can see what changed. A lot of times they try and sneak in changes very quickly and then get them passed. And most people don't know what those changes are, and they could have big consequences. So it's live. And if you do anything in the policy or nonprofit or kind of lobbying adjacent field, would love to talk to you.
Yeah, I think that has amazing implications, because I think that is something that we here at the Hill of Roses are aiming to do down the line. And so we are so glad that you're spearheading that effort. So we hope everyone will go check that out. Cody, as always, it was great being able to catch up with you, man. We hope to be able to chat with you again soon in the future. Yeah, thanks so much, John. Glad to see what you guys are doing here at the Hill of Roses. Hope to be back on. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of the Hill of Roses. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, please let us know by subscribing to our channel, liking today's video, and sharing the video with your friends. Also, if you want to be notified, please make sure you hit the bell when you subscribe. Finally, if you want to find more of our network's content, please go to thehillofroses.com. With that being said, we love y'all for helping the movement grow, and we hope you're staying rosy out there.